A seismic ruling today from the United States Supreme Court of monumental consequence, one that not only forcibly upends a core pillar of Donald Trump's economic policy, but also, in rare form for this court of late, limits the scope of Donald Trump's presidential power. Writing for the 6-3 majority, Chief Justice John Roberts explains why Trump does not have the tariff authority he's asserted these past several months. Quote, the president asserts the extraordinary power to unilaterally impose tariffs of unlimited amount, duration, and scope. In light of the breadth, history, and constitutional context of that asserted authority, he must identify clear congressional authorization to exercise it. Basically, if Congress doesn't pass a law saying he can do it, he can't do it. In response, Donald Trump, live and on camera, seemed to go about the 7 stages of grief in front of an assembled press and obviously the world. First, shock, denial, anger, rage, really, at the Supreme Court. It took the form of a disgusting new line of attack on the 6 justices who ruled against him. Watch.
They're against anything that makes America strong, healthy, and great again. They also are a, frankly, disgrace to our nation, those justices. They're an automatic no matter how good a case you have. It's a no. But you can't knock their loyalty. It's one thing you can do with some of our people. Others think they're being politically correct, which has happened before far too often with certain members of this court, and it's happened so often with this court. What a shame. Having to do with voting in particular, when in fact they're just being fools and lapdogs for the rhinos and the radical left Democrats, and not that this should have anything at all to do with it. They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution.
For those keeping score at home, that was a new low even for him. Trump's 7 stages of grief, processed from there, bargaining, depression, I dare say, testing, and ultimately acceptance, as he announced that he'd attempt to invoke a new 10% global tariff, citing an act passed in 1974, although, once again, there are questions about his legal authority to do it that way. Despite Donald Trump's assertion today that this was some sort of twisted victory for the administration, it's actually a win for those who have argued that he'd overstepped his authorities and for advocates of our 250-year-old separation of powers tradition. This was our 3rd branch of government ordering the 2nd to seek approval from the 1st. The short, medium, and long-term consequences of this development are still taking shape, even as we come on the air. It is more uncertainty for American businesses, large and small. They have already paid a price, literally and figuratively. So what about refunds for those businesses and their customers? How will the administration put the toothpaste back in the tube? In his dissent, conservative Justice Brett Kavanaugh writes this, quote, the court says nothing today about whether, and if so, how, the government should go about returning the billions of dollars that it has collected from importers. But that process is likely to be a mess, as was acknowledged at oral argument. On that point, the New York Times writes this, quote, so far the U.S. Treasury has collected roughly $240 billion in tariff revenue since April 2nd, 2025, a date Trump labeled Liberation Day as he imposed his sweeping tariffs. The research firm Capital Economics estimates that if the Treasury is forced to issue refunds, the cost would run to about $120 billion, or 0.5% of GDP. The blast radius of this landmark decision extends outward from there. What about the stock market? Trump insisted our economy would suffer if the court struck down tariffs, but look at that. At close a few moments ago, things held steady. The Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ ended the day up slightly. What about Trump's trade deals, struck under penalty of a mechanism over which he has no control anymore? But for the moment, the White House must scheme its way forward, following an increasingly rare directive from the Supreme Court. It told Donald Trump no. That's where we start today with Neil Katyal. He argued against the tariffs before the United States Supreme Court, representing a group of more than 50 businesses. He's also the former principal deputy solicitor general of the United States. He's also a former close friend of our show. We're happy to see you, Neil. Congratulations on your win today.
Thank you. Wonderful to see you, Nicole.
So take me inside what the court decided, and then we'll deal with what happens next.
Yeah, so the court, I think, today really strongly said President Trump's tariffs policy is unconstitutional and illegal. They said, look, if you want to get tariffs, the way to do it is to go to Congress and ask for authorization. And so, you know, it's not a decision about any particular president. It's a decision about the presidency. And the Chief Justice, writing for 6 justices, used very strong language about the president, saying, you know, the Constitution requires you to get this affirmative approval of the Congress, and you can't just do this on your own. In America, the stroke of the president's pen is not enough to impose taxes on the American people, and tariffs are nothing else but taxes, the Chief Justice said. And I think it's notable that this decision wasn't just written by some group of lefty justices, to the extent there even are any. It was written by and joined by 6 justices, including 2 justices appointed by Donald Trump himself, Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. Both of them saying in full that these tariffs were unconstitutional. And so, you know, when I presented the argument to the Supreme Court on November 5th, I made about 6 key points. Every single one, Nicole, of those 6 points was accepted 100% by all 6 justices today on the Supreme Court.
So explain the dissent to me.
Yeah, so the dissent written by Justice Kavanaugh says that presidents have flexibility, and if the president is able to, for example, blockade goods, then he should be able to impose taxes on goods. And the fundamental problem with that, as the Chief Justice said, echoing what I said at the argument, is tariffs are fundamentally different than blockades. Blockades stop some goods from coming in, but they don't impose taxes on the American people. They don't take money out of your wallet in order for you to get something. So that's very different than a blockade. And that's why, you know, going all the way back to the Boston Tea Party, and this is something that the Chief Justice again recognized in his opinion for the court, we've always understood the taxation power to be special and different. And so I think the court today sends a clear message to the president, to future presidents, hey, you got to color within the lines. And Nicole, you know, I've had the privilege of being the government's top lawyer, the federal government's top lawyer in the Supreme Court. It's frankly, you know, a big deal whenever any federal policy is challenged, but it's incredibly rare to have one of the president's signature initiatives challenged and go to the Supreme Court, and rarer still to have the Supreme Court say no. You know, normally presidents get all sorts of deference, and I think here the president got deference, but the policy that he chose was so blatantly unconstitutional and illegal that the Supreme Court said no.
6 members of the Supreme Court said no. 3 seem to give him a tunnel.
You only need 5 in this business.
To burrow under.
You only need 5 in this business.
Well, I want to turn to his reaction. I think, were on the air together through the duration of his really unprecedented smears against Robert Mueller and the people who investigated him. He seemed to use that category of smears for the 6 Supreme Court justices who delivered this ruling. Really, you know, I'm not a lawyer, never argued before the Supreme Court, but they seem to say this is illegal and unconstitutional. And in response, Donald Trump says your family should be embarrassed of you. You are a disgrace, to Amy Coney Barrett, to Chief Justice Roberts, to Justice Gorsuch, and to the 3 liberal justices. Have you heard that before in your career?
Look, I'm not going to, Nicole, respond to the president's comments. I mean, I'm focused on what the decision said, which is it's a resounding win for the American people and for the Constitution. I mean, I can tell you that I've been on the losing end of Supreme Court decisions, both as the government's top lawyer and in private practice or representing pro bono clients. You know, I have deep respect for the court and always do, whether I win or lose. You know, one of the great things about the American system is what just happened today. I mean, just think about it. Like, I was able to go to court, the son of immigrants, able to go to court and say on behalf of American small businesses, hey, this president is acting illegally. And I was able to present my case, have them ask really hard questions at me. It was a really intense oral argument. And at the end of it, they voted and we won. That is something so extraordinary about this country, the idea that we have a system that self-corrects, that allows us to say, you might be the most powerful man in the world, but you still can't break the Constitution. I mean, that to me is what today is about.
What do you make of the fact that the ruling in spirit and resoundingness, as you said, you only need 5, 6 justices delivered this ruling today, this decision. Again, to the non-expert public, 3 of them were appointed by Democratic presidents, 3 of them were appointed by Republican presidents, 2, as you said, by Donald Trump. And his response was to figure out a workaround. Do those same small businesses feel like the storm has passed, or are they still concerned about Donald Trump and tariffs?
Well, I think you always have to be concerned when you have a president who, signals some disrespect for the law and the judicial system. So, I suspect that, that some of our clients are still concerned. The decision today, like any court decision, isn't going to put every concern to rest. But I think it's a really clear statement by the Supreme Court that the president's got to color within the lines and can't just adopt extravagant tariff policies without going to Congress first. And I think that's a really important point here, which is we weren't saying you can never have tariffs. We were saying that the American way is to go and get them approved by the Congress. And if the president is so right that we need these tariffs, that we are suckers and all the other language he used, if that's right today, he has a very clear path. Indeed, I believe he's going there on Tuesday to the State of the Union. He could ask for Congress to impose such legislation. He's been able to do that for more than a year, and he hasn't. Now, notably, when he was president the first time, he did try and get legislation passed by Congress, and they said no. And I think that tells you all you need to know about where this tariff policy is headed.